Pleasing everyone is impossible, of course. You already know that you can't make everyone happy, but that doesn't always stop you from trying. If you chronically overextend yourself to the point of exhaustion and depletion, you might have been labeled a people pleaser, someone who puts others' needs ahead of their own. People pleasing gets a bad rap, and those who do it are seen as meek, subservient doormats, or worse, control freaks. And while it is a form of control, it's not malicious. It's survival, a desperate attempt to stay safe, to avoid conflict and anger or abandonment or rejection. There's a strong correlation between emotional abandonment and people-pleasing behavior. If you grew up with a volatile parent who misdirected their stress at you, you probably learned how to sense their moods before they erupted. You developed subtle skills like appeasement, caretaking, attunement, not because you were naturally nurturing, but because your safety depended on it. So yes, you learned to control, but not in order to manipulate, to protect. The truth is that people-pleasing isn't inherently bad. Wanting others to feel comfortable in your presence is a beautiful thing. When your friend comes over for dinner, you ask about their food allergies. When your partner has a hard day, you offer to cook or hold space. When your child is sick, you bring soup and soft blankets. But that's not people pleasing. That's care. It's connection. The problem arises when your kindness costs you your well-being. When your body says no, but your mouth says yes. When you offer more than you have, not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to. People-pleasing isn't a character flaw. It's a trauma response, often the result of years spent having your boundaries ignored, overridden, or punished. We tend to think of trauma as something dramatic or violent, but trauma is also the subtle, consistent erosion of self. The thousands of tiny moments that you were taught that your no was inconvenient or unacceptable or irrelevant, that your job was to be agreeable, palatable, good. Like when your mom's second cousin's daughter wanted a hug and you were told to oblige under the guise of politeness. Or like the way girls are taught to be well-behaved no matter the internal landscape of their emotions. Even when you wanted to scream, to slam the door, to run barefoot into the woods, you were compelled to be good because that's what you do. You meet expectations, you avoid negative consequences. But here's the thing, if you can't say no, you also cannot truly say yes. You may comply, but compliance isn't consent. Consent, real consent, requires agency. It requires the option to refuse. Without that, your yes is performative. It's survival. It's appeasement. I see this most clearly with the horses, of course. They are my wisest teachers. Humans rarely let horses say no. When a horse refuses to move forward or cross water or load in a trailer, we label it as bad behavior and we find ways to fix it, even if we're using soft cues and kind words. We coax and pressure and manipulate. Even in natural horsemanship, success is often measured by the horse ultimately doing what we want. But if the horse can't say no, her yes is meaningless. She's not consenting, she's complying. She is, in essence, people-pleasing. Because when she does what the human wants, the pressure stops. She gets left alone. The stress subsides. I remember when I first got Shelby, my highly sensitive pony, and I needed a farrier to come and trim his long hooves. The man showed up and I explained that Shelby can be slow to trust. He's kind, but he's very skittish. The man leaned across Shelby's back, patting him firmly on the opposite side with the flat of his rasp. My skin crawled. I saw the freeze in Shelby's eyes. His neck stiffened and he was holding his breath. He was definitely enduring. Horses should let people touch them is how the thinking goes. And yeah, we do want horses to be comfortable with human contact so that we can care for them safely. But Shelby's reaction reminded me of every time a strange man in a bar slung his arm around my shoulders as if by virtue of me being female, I owed him my body. In those moments, I froze, just like Shelby, because rejecting those advances can provoke anger or sometimes even violence. And I'm not strong enough to fight back. I know this, just as Shelby knew instinctively that his best option in that moment was to endure. Fortunately, Shelby had me to advocate for him, and I put an end to that situation immediately. This pattern of compliance often leads to what's known as functional freeze, a state where you're doing all the right things, going through the motions, but inside you feel hollow, disconnected, and numb. Your nervous system is stuck and there's activation from danger signals, but no way to escape. So the parasympathetic system slams the brakes, trying to protect you from overwhelm. It creates a kind of pressure cooker, fight or flight energy trapped under forced calm. And when that freeze can no longer hold, it doesn't thaw. It erupts through rage, burnout, chronic pain, autoimmune flare-ups, exhaustion. Yeah, a horse's explosion looks different than a human's, but the pattern is basically the same. And we do this to ourselves too. We push and punish ourselves into good behavior. We override our bodies to wake up early, go to work, be agreeable, perform. We take jobs that we hate, stay in relationships that hurt. We say yes when every cell says no. Because compliance has kept us safe, but not whole. So what does true consent feel like in the body? What does it mean to say yes because you want to, not because you're afraid not to? It can take time to relearn, but you can start here. First, acknowledge the pattern. Notice how you tend to overextend, overfunction, or people please. And if you feel any shame around that, don't. That didn't happen because you're broken. It happened because your early life environment likely didn't meet your emotional needs consistently or safely. This was your nervous system's way of loving you into survival. Second, observe your soothing strategies. How do you manage other people's emotions? What happens in your body when you don't smooth things over? Often avoiding people pleasing spikes anxiety, and that anxiety is what needs tending. Next, be sure to regulate your nervous system. Behavioral change from a dysregulated state rarely sticks. If anxiety and fear of rejection are what's driving your people pleasing, then resolving that anxiety is crucial. And for a more detailed outline of how to quickly regulate your nervous system, check out my free class. I've got a link in the description box below. Finally, tune into your body and not your brain. People pleasing is usually a top-down override of a bottom-up truth. So instead of asking, should I do this, ask, how does this feel in my body? Expansive or contracted? Is it heavy or light? Tight or relaxed? Over time, noticing these subtle sensory experiences builds self-attunement and a solid foundation for personal agency. The more you trust your body's signals, the less you're driven by guilt or overthinking. The goal isn't to stop caring, it's to care without losing yourself. Kindness is most powerful when it comes from truth, not from fear. When your nervous system feels safe enough to say no, your yes becomes radiant, real, and alive. And that's the kind of kindness that the world actually needs. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.